Okay. Uh, who are you and what do you do for a living?
I'm David Adams. I'm an attorney at Fromwell, Jaffe and Adams in Pennsylvania and Cherry Hill.
First question is what is eminent domain or the principle of eminent domain?
I guess eminent domain, or the principle, is that certain governmental authorities and certain entities that have been given the power by the government has the right to take away personal property for what is perceived to be at least the public gain.
Mm-hmm.
It could be done without any meaningful defense on the part of the landowner. And the sole issue generally in those is what is the amount of fair value. So that at least while your property is taken, the statute and the Constitution requires that you receive fair compensation for it.
Do you think that a lot of times fair compensation is given?
I haven't had that much experience with these cases to know that, but in the statutes, at least in Pennsylvania and presumably in the other states, you get more than just the fair value of your real property. So, for example, if you had a shopping center that was condemned to put in a public parking garage, they would pay you not only for the value of the land, but moving expenses, dislocation expenses, and certain other soft costs. But if one isn't satisfied with the proposed award, you have a right to appeal to a board of review and have a finder of fact determine whether it's appropriate.
Second question: is eminent domain practiced often? Is it common a lot?
I don't know enough about it to know whether it is, but certainly the threat of eminent domain eliminates a lot of the cases. So if the school district wants your property, they come to you and say, we're going to condemn your property. Let's work something out and see if we can do a so-called deed in lieu of condemnation. So a lot of times the formal process doesn't happen because it doesn't need to happen because of the chilling effect of the threat that it will happen. Landowners know there's no defense to it, so you might as well try to negotiate a compensation.
Mm-hmm. Brings us to the third question you were just saying. If someone came to you with a case of eminent domain, how would you approach them or how would you approach the case?
Representing a landowner?
Mm-hmm.
We did have a case that I tried probably 10 years ago, represented a small Christian school in the city of Chester that was condemned by virtue of the exercise of eminent domain by the Chester Housing Authority to demolish the school. So it was clear to me that there was no defense on the merits. That is, it was a clear, the housing authority in Chester City had a clear legal right to take the property. So the sole question was eminent domain. So my advice to them was, let's figure out how we best posture and negotiate for the fair market value, for the compensation, for the damage award. We can't fight them on the underlying merits that they can take it. So we focused all of our efforts on maximizing the value that we would receive from the lost property.
And may I ask what the outcome of the case was?
Yeah, fortunately we got a good outcome because probably with 6 months prior to when they condemned our property, our client's property, we had an agreement of sale to sell the property for I think $600,000 in an arm's length transaction. So we said to the condemning authority, it's $600,000. We had it sold for that. The deal fell through for other reasons. That's what we want. And they told us to go pound sand because they were a very arrogant authority. So we appealed their award, which was like $300,000, and we took the case up to a board of review at the county level, went in there, presented our appraisers, presented our offer that we had of the previous deal for $600,000 and said, the market has spoken, it's worth $600,000, and we ultimately got the $600,000. But we had to fight for it.
Mm-hmm. What is there an abuse of eminent domain? Do you think it is abused?
I don't have any personal experience with that, but there's no doubt it has been abused. You're probably familiar with the Kelo case, the Supreme Court case, where eminent domain was essentially the governmental authorities were allowing eminent domain to be used not for a specific public purpose, but for the specific gain of private individuals. So it was clearly an abuse of eminent domain, at least from, say, its constitutional base. So I think the Kelo decision reined that in and said it has, as a result of the Kelo decision, there was an uprising. So many of the states then narrowed their laws to restrict it to public purpose only. And I think so. I think there was clearly a perceived abuse of the procedure, which may have been reined in to some degree.
Do you have a personal opinion about eminent domain or the principle of it? Like, what do you feel about it? What needs to change? Do you?
The issue with eminent domain, of course, is not so much the compensation, but the right that someone has to take something away from you. But if we think about it that the way we live here in this home here, I may own the property, but I own it subject to so many other restrictions: zoning, land development, building code, use. I can't build to the property line. I can only use it for a home. I can't put a pool in unless I get relief. I have to build my home in a certain fashion to comply with the current building restrictions. So if you think about it in that perspective, eminent domain is just another chink in the armor, if you will, or maybe it's a better example of how it's a slippery slope. All of these restrictive regulations that control our rights, our private property rights, this is just one more in a long line of those. That being said, it's hard to imagine how anything similar to our current society could function without the power of eminent domain for things like streets, sewers, public water, public lighting.
Brings to the next question. Can eminent domain be used in a positive way?
I guess the answer to that one depends on whose perspective you're looking at. If I've lived on my family farm for 300 years, 10 generations have lived on this family farm, and it wants to be condemned so that they can put in a sewer treatment capacity so that all the people in the surrounding areas can go off failing septic systems and have proper functioning sanitary sewer, you'd say, yeah, if we condemn the Adams farm and we put a sewer treatment plant in there, we're increasing the health and safety for 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 surrounding residents. So from their point of view, it's obviously very positive. From my point of view, as the owner of the farm, the person whose ox is being gored, it's not a very positive development for me.
When do you think eminent domain started being used the most, or started being used like in general?
My guess is it probably goes all the way back to ancient times.
Is it more a federal thing, or is it like a state concept? And is there a difference between state and federal eminent domain?
I think it's a state and federal concept. So that is to say that there are state and federal constitutional provisions that apply to it, and then separately, of course, state and federal statutes and regulations that apply to the entire process. I don't know what happens more and what happens less.
Do you have anything to add? Any final comments about eminent domain? Like any other thing you'd like to say?
No, I think I've exhausted my knowledge of the subject.